Thanks for joining us today for Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show buzz reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Mick Haley, Bob Bertucci, and Brian Gimolero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. Our weekly news show has leaders in our sport provide their perspective on the questions that are asked, along with the discussions on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us. Want to make a difference? Please remember to renew your AVCA membership. This one organization that represents all coaches at all levels when lobbying for changes that are needed in our sport. And you can make a difference by registering at avca.org. The NCAA interim NIL policy didn't just reinstate NIL right for college athletes. It quietly opened the market up to an entire new demographic, high schoolers. Question: is the number of collegiate athlete announcements listing the dollars amount of NIL endorsements being used to get an edge on recruiting? However, remember the U.S. Olympic athletes with remaining college eligibility so far have combined 13 medals in Tokyo. Doesn't that set them up nicely for the new NIL money? The Olympics are nearly at the end of the first week with both men's and women's beach and indoor volleyball and the opening ceremonies, which displayed not only the Japanese culture, but also the technology, which they have always been the leader. Now let's head over to Japan to bring you a live conversation with Olympic insights and discussion around the events taking place in Tokyo. Today, we have two special guests, one coming directly from Japan, which is our featured guest, and a guest from the United States. Our first guest that I will introduce has come to us via our special friend and a colleague, Dr. Carol Oglesby, who was my manager of the USA World University Games volleyball team, which was held in Mexico City. Dr. Kanae Haneishi, Associate Professor, Department of Kinesiology and Human Performance at Valley City State University. And guess where? North Dakota. Who lives in North Dakota? But she lives there. Originally, she's from Tokyo, Japan, and has lived in the United States for 20 years. An undergraduate degree from Japan, double master's degree in exercise science and sports studies. A doctorate degree from UMass Amherst on sport pedagogy and coaching. 17 years as a women's soccer coach at NCAA D1 and D3, and an accomplished soccer player and won the NCAA D2 national championships, and a silver medal at the World University Games as a member of the Japanese national team, and team captain for the New York Magic semi-pro team for 6 years. And she's only 21, right? All right. Before Dr. Kanae introduces our featured guest, we would like to honor her with a short video. Dr. Kanae, let's head to Tokyo, Japan for the introductions for today.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kanae Haneishi, and I am the Associate Professor at Valley City State University in North Dakota. I am also the Secretary General of the WomenSport International. So it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Yasuko Miyajima, the Sports and the Cultural Journalist and the Executive Director of General Incorporated Association, Cultivator. She is the first Japanese woman to become a sports broadcaster at one of the major Japanese TV station, TV Asahi. And she joined the TV Asahi in 1977 as an announcer. And she has led over 40 sports documentaries and stories as a reporter as well as the director. From 1980 Moscow's Summer Olympics to 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, she has reported the Olympic Games 19 times from the Olympic site. After retiring from TV Asahi in 2020, she has been independently working as a sports and cultural journalist. She has served for many critical positions in Japanese sports. For example, she is the chair of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, the vice president of the Promotional Marketing Committee for Japanese Olympic Committee. She was also the director of Japanese Volleyball Association in 2015 to 2017. Additionally, she was selected for numerous awards, including the Society of Japanese Women in Radio and Television Award in 1992, as well as the Japanese Olympic Committee Women's Sports Award 2016. Thank you for being with us, being here with us, Ms. Miyajima. We look forward to hearing from your stories today.
Thank you very much. Konnichiwa. Ohayo gozaimasu. Genki desu ka?
Ruth, thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to see you.
Yes. Now we have so many questions. How many hours do you have tonight for us?
Oh, all day long.
Okay, so let's jump in. Tell us a little bit about your background in broadcasting in sports, but also what is your involvement at the present time or the past with the Olympics?
Yeah, yes. Kanae already introduced me, and I have been active girl since I was a child, and I have been playing various sports in curricular school activities. I played soft tennis in junior high school and high school. I majored in French literature at Waseda University, and I joined the TV station in 1977 as an announcer. As TV Asahi acquired the exclusive domestic broadcasting right for the Moscow Olympics, and I had a business order that issued to become a sports reporter. This is the beginning of my role in sports. In 1977, the first volleyball World Cup was held in Japan. A gold medalist of the Montreal Olympic won again. I often interviewed them, and I know them. So when they formed the non-profit organization Volleyball Montreal Society in 2006, I became a board member and have been working with them for 14 years. This group was disbanded last year. I'm sorry.
Wow.
From that connection, I was also the board member of the Japan Volleyball Association from 2015 to 2017, as Kanae mentioned. And already, I have participated in the Olympics for 19 times in the field as media. From the Moscow Olympics in 1980 to Pyeongchang Winter Games in 2018. I have worked as a commentator, reporter, interviewer, and even director for TV Asahi throughout Japan.
Wow.
Only Japan.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, now, what is the local community attitude about having the Olympic Games in Tokyo?
It is very difficult to say. Up to a month before the Tokyo Olympics, 80% of public opinion polls showed that the Olympics should be canceled or postponed. 80%. 1 week before the event, the national poll showed 55% opposed and 33% in favor. let me explain why there is such opposition to the Olympics. From the Western point of view, Japan seems to be a safe country with a very low incidence of COVID-19. However, as reporters who came to Japan to cover the Olympics have begun to report, the actual number of coronavirus cases in Japan is much higher than the published figures. Taking PCR test is very common in the world, but here in Japan, we cannot take PCR test easily because the government decided early on that PCR testing was not necessary. Japan is the only country in the world where this is the case.
Wow.
The people of Japan feel that there are 10 times more cases than announced. So they have been opposed to the Olympics, which will bring in an influx of people from all over the world. People are also angry at the IOC's attitude. IOC directors do not understand the situation in Japan and say, I will hold it even if Armageddon comes. Or no matter what Prime Minister Suga says, the Olympics will be held. I am angry at the IOC's attitude of not listening at all. Since Chairman Bach is thinking about making money, he is nicknamed Rip of Baron, also in Japan.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Okay, now Mick has got lots of questions, so we're going to go to Mick next.
Well, thank you very much. You answered much of my first question, but just very simply, why do you think it's been so difficult to get the vaccination program going in your country? Because
Yes.
that would have been a big help to not only your country, the games, and then secondly, how has this affected support for the games?
Yes, I think so too. But in Japan, vaccination started with healthcare workers, then with the elderly over 65. Finally, people under the age of 65 are starting to get vaccinated. The vaccination rate is currently 31% in one dose. It is not because many people are reluctant to be vaccinated. And only 20% for second dose. Only 20% for the second dose. It is not because many people are reluctant to be vaccinated. And the reason why the rate is so low is because the government was unable to secure the number of vaccine due to the negotiation error. It says, even if you make an appointment in early July, you will not be able to get the first dose until September. When Prime Minister Suga went to the US to meet with President Biden, he asked to meet with the CEO of Pfizer, but he was turned down. If the vaccine had been more widely available, there would not have been so many people opposing the Olympics, as you know. And furthermore, hospitals in the Tokyo metropolitan area are currently seeing an increase in the number of serious ill patients. Hospital beds in Tokyo are full, and the number of people receiving treatment at home is increasing. Some people are even saying that the Olympics should be canceled even now.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Mick, you got your second question?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question. I'm very sorry to hear all of this because certainly we feel for all of you folks there. I have friends in Tokyo, and I certainly want them to be well and healthy. So this is somewhat disturbing. Let me switch a little bit more towards volleyball. Will
Mhm.
these games have a positive effect, even though they're under concern? Will they have a positive effect on the Japanese volleyball
Mhm.
and support for the sport in your country?
Mhm. Now that the game have started, some athletes are winning gold medals. Most of the venue unattended, no spectators. So we are cheering for them just on TV.
Mhm.
As they win, people interested in the sports, uh, the population of the fund will be increased. Men's volleyball had been in the doldrums for a long time. And however, on July 24th, Japan won the first match against Venezuela. This is the first time in 29 years since the Barcelona Olympics in 1992 that the men's team has won on the Olympic stage. Yuki Ishikawa, the captain of this year's team, is also active in the Italian professional league. So we can expect great things from him. The women's team's ability is still unknown. The coach is Kumi Nakata, the former setter and bronze medalist in the Los Angeles Olympics. She was the first female volleyball player in Japan to participate in 3 Olympics games: Los Angeles, Seoul, and Barcelona. The women's team won their first match against Kenya in the straight set, but the main attacker, Serena Koga, was injured then, so nobody says about the prediction.
Wow.
And there is one more thing that needs to be added. A recent study concluded that the Olympic Games have no effect whatsoever in accelerating the nation's sports promotion, especially self-directed physical exercise. To accelerate sports and physical exercise among the public, it is necessary to create an appropriate mechanism. It was an illusion that having the Olympics would encourage people in that country to play sports.
Wow.
That's all.
Okay, that's okay. Bob, you're up.
Miss Miyajima, thank you
Yes.
very much for being here. Uh, I can't believe you were at 19 Olympics, covering 19 Olympics. That's amazing, especially for a woman so young as yourself.
Oh, yeah, here we go. We know.
Well, I do have a question
Yes.
about the Olympics. I don't know how you could possibly answer this, but what's the most memorable Olympic moment?
In the Summer Olympics, Yuko Arimori came in the second place in the women's marathon at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. In the Winter Olympics, Seiko Hashimoto placed within 8th place in every 5 event. She participated in the 5 event in speed skating. Ms. Seiko Hashimoto is now the president of the organizing committee for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. In both cases, it was because I had covered their training for a long period of time and had more feeling for the athletes than others. And there are emotions that I can feel because I have watched them grow up as if they were my family. So, and these 2 girls are most memorable athletes for me.
So
Excellent.
you shared in their whole travel through learning the game, becoming excellent, and until winning at the Olympics. That's a great story.
Okay, your second question for her.
Oh yeah, my second question is a little bit different. How about the economic impact of the Olympics in Japan?
Mm.
You know, and do you know how the impact has happened for other countries?
Yes, yes. Before the corona pandemic, the economic effect of the Tokyo Olympics was said to be 12 trillion yen. However, the 12 trillion yen, which is said to be the legacy effect, will disappear because spectators from overseas are prohibited from traveling, and spectators are not spectated at most of the venues. It is estimated that the direct loss will be 147 billion yen without spectators. The Olympics are now more than just a positive economic effect. There are many negative ones. It is famous story that the facilities of the 2004 Athens Olympics were abandoned. Let's look at the data on the economic impact of the past Olympics. Once the venue is decided, the economic growth of the host country tend to increase due to the infrastructure development. However, the year after the Olympics, the growth rate tend to decline, as in the case of burnout syndrome. In Japan, there is a plan that the government and the ruling party will use this Olympic to gain the support of the people and bring it to the elections in the fall to win. It is possible to recover at the Olympics because the approval rating of the current administration has dropped to less than 30%. Domestically, the Olympics are said to be completely used for politics. I am sorry.
Okay, Bob, you better have a third question that's better than that one.
Yeah, well, that's a tough one. And the thing is, no, that's a tough answer. I mean, can you elaborate on how people from different countries respond to the Olympics being organized in their countries? Are they enthusiastic about it, or they oppose it? I mean, obviously Japan has opposed it. How about other countries? And I didn't know any of the things that you just mentioned. So I can see where that's going to make a big difference.
As I listened to the opinions in favor of and against the Tokyo Olympics, one thing became clear. In Japan, the Olympics was something that the people loved, along with the United Nations and the Nobel Prize. However, this reserve arrangement act by the IOC has many people's eyes opened. Many people are now saying that it is time to have the Olympics in a place like Greece every time, instead of various countries. Many cities are becoming more and more opposed to Olympics due to environmental destruction. Brisbane, Australia has been chosen to host the Olympics in 2032, but it is time to think about how the Olympics should be held. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's a tough one. All right, we're going to we're going to come back to you, Bob, but let's go to Mick for his third question.
Well, I have several questions, but I'll just ask one for the right now. But thank you for going through these questions. You've been very good so far, and it's been very eye-opening. Generally, though, if you did not have COVID issues, what do you think the games might have done for the Japanese people and the sport of volleyball? Considering if there were no COVID, would this have been a important time? And I'll preface this with one statement. I was the coach of the women's team for the United States in the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. In that quadrennial from 97 through 2000, Australia put a lot of money into the development of both the men's and the women's volleyball programs. After the Olympics, they disbanded both the men's and the women's funding and went only to sand or beach because they thought that was the only place they had a chance to win a medal. How do you view, looking in your crystal ball, how do you view the future if the games could have gone on without COVID? What do you think would have happened in Japan, and how would it affected the Japanese volleyball?
About the Japanese volleyball, it is not easy to maintain the team in school because the population of the children are decreasing now. So it is very hard to make one team in one school. So they must make team with another or other schools. So for the beginning of the volleyball, the situation is not so easy in Japan. This is an answer for you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll try to be a little bit more clear, but had we not had COVID, would this have helped Japan and volleyball, or because of the declining population, is it not, the games would not have done anything positive in that general thought about improving volleyball in Japan?
It's depend on the results of the national team in this Olympics.
If they do well, then Japan benefits. If they don't do well, then people kind of move on.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Bob, we're going to go to you and your fourth question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, did you want to finish something?
It's okay.
Okay. All right.
well,
Bob.
the question I have, it has to do with interviewing. I mean, you know, as a volleyball coach, and these guys laugh at me because I'm the youngest of the group. I've coached in 6 different decades, and my coaching has changed from each decade. All right. How has your interviewing of the current Olympians changed from interviewing athletes from the 76 Olympics?
The 1976 Montreal Olympics, Japan's women volleyball team won the gold medal. However, even at that time, it was mostly Coach Shigeo Yamada who was being interviewed. The player hardly spoke. Now, in addition to the coach, the players are called in for interviews. In many cases, the players have been given media training, so almost all of them answer questions flawlessly.
Wow.
So they're coached on how to answer the questions before you're even asking them.
Yeah, for the first, the coach will be asked, and next, the player.
Okay, so this is going to be an easy one, not compared to Bob's and Nick's. This is going to be an easy question. What about the history of Japanese volleyball, you know, throughout the years? I mean, the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, a rich history, and you might like to address that.
As you know, 1964 Tokyo, the volleyball game is included in Olympic Games, and men were third place, and for women, they got gold medal, as you know. And it was memorable moment for Japanese volleyball. Most of the Japanese people love to watch the volleyball game on TV. Me too. And volleyball became most popular sports in Japan. And 1968 Mexico, second place for men and second place for women. 1972 Munich, men's gold. Men's got gold medal and women's second. And 1976 Montreal, men's fourth place, women's gold medal. And 1980 Moscow, Japan did boycott at same as US. And 1984 Los Angeles, seventh place for men, third place for women. 1988 Seoul, 10th place for men, fourth place for women. It became difficult to get the medals for Japanese. 1902 Barcelona, sixth place for men, fifth place for women. And 96 Atlanta, men could not participate in the games, and ninth place for women. 2000 Sydney, both men and women couldn't participate in the Olympic Games. And 2004 Athens, fifth place fifth place for women, and men couldn't participate. And 2008 Beijing, 11th place for men, 5th place for women. The results are decreasing, but 2012 London Olympic, men couldn't participate, but third place for women. Women got bronze medal. At 2016 Rio de Janeiro, men couldn't participate, and fifth place for women. And this is Tokyo. The result was not quite good in these Olympics, so the number of volleyball fans are decreasing actually.
Okay. All right. So what's your prediction for Japan for Tokyo right now?
Right now, just a moment. Prediction about the this Tokyo Olympics. Yes. Yeah. Unlike the 1970s, every country is getting stronger. Yes. So it's predictable. However, the Japanese men's team is an interesting, as I already mentioned. So keep an eye on team, especially the captain Yuki Ishikawa. He is a nice and skillful attacker. Men's team won the first and the second game in Olympics already. For women, Sarina Koga, the main attacker, was expected to play important role, but she was injured severely in the first match of this Olympics, the match Japan versus Kenya. So it is very difficult to say something about the women's volleyball team.
Well, we hope expected to come back, or is she out?
It's quite difficult. If she can come back, the end of the match, the end of the series.
All right, Mick, you got another question.
I only have one quick one. Can you give us an update? We hear things on TV. We're watching the games all day. We see many beautiful things about Japan. Actually, I have two questions, and the first one is about the infrastructure. You have built so many beautiful facilities. Your facilities are second to none in the world. Will you be hosting games in various sports in the future in Japan once COVID is done? Is that something that the Japanese are planning and would look forward to?
The volleyball venue for the Olympics is an area called Ariake area, and it is a capacity of 15,000 spectators. It's very big. There is a big possibility that the arena will be continued to be used for volleyball in the future. However, I must add, as with any arena, It cannot be maintained without concert in addition to sporting events.
Mhm.
This arena is not exclusively for volleyball either. This floor is made of concrete and track can be put in to load and unload luggage.
Mhm.
Of course, when playing volleyball, board floor is stretched over it. However, you will feel a little strain on your legs compared to the floor with boards from the beginning. Yeah.
All right. All right.
And,
Bob. Oh, sorry, Mick.
my last question was just,
Mm.
can you give us an update of what the COVID situation is in the Olympic Village? Are more athletes getting sick, or have they pretty much been able to get a hold of that situation?
Yes. The Olympic Organization Committee announced the number of the athletes, the coaches, and the staffs who suffered from the COVID-19 from 1st of this month to yesterday. Total number is 148 people. And now, as the urgent matter, a lot of players are complaining the heat of the playtime, especially the tennis player Novak Djokovic and Daniel Medvedev require that the starting time of the match should be delayed until 4 o'clock in the afternoon instead of the 11 o'clock in the morning. They said that this summer weather condition is the worst in their experiences. As you know, Japanese summer climate is not only the heat, but also the humidity. Just before the opening ceremony day, the temperature raised until 34.9 Celsius. It is about 95 Fahrenheit, and humidity is 70%. Doctors are concerning heat stroke of the athletes. So the heat and COVID-19 double attack.
Oh.
But fortunately, volleyball games are operated in indoor. Nobody worry about the heat stroke.
Oh, wow. All right, Bob, you've got last question.
Okay, well, I mean, COVID is a problem. The heat is a problem. But now most of our viewers don't realize that you're sitting there doing this interview with us, and you're less than a day away from a typhoon hitting Japan. Tell us a little bit about that. I already saw on television today how it affected some of the cycling events and how people were having to slow down as they were making the turns. How is this typhoon going to affect the Olympics?
We suffered from natural disasters every year. So it doesn't matter for us, but I don't know for the foreign athlete. And can I add one thing?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the volleyball situation in Japan. I'd like to ask you to help. About extracurricular activities. Do you know Japanese extracurricular activities? In Japan, there are extracurricular activities in junior high school and high school, and school teachers give guidance. It is in these extracurricular activities that many children meet volleyball for the first time. However, there are many problems with these activities in Japan. Violence and harassment by instructors, bullying from the seniors to juniors are frequent, especially in volleyball and basketball. There was a case of basketball captain committing suicide due to the bullying by his coach. In this year, a student in Okinawa was committed suicide as well. In 2020, last year, the NGO Human Rights Watch issued a report saying that there is too much bullying and violence in Japanese sports. Physical education in Japan was introduced as a school curriculum in the Meiji era, and most of the sports are introduced in those days. During the imperialist era, this physical education was conducted in the same way as military training. That's why violent teaching in extracurricular activities is still sometimes tolerated. I'm working to eliminate harassment and violence in club, in extracurricular activities. However, harassment and violence are not easy to deal with because they take place unseen. That's a big problem for our country. That's all.
Well, it's like, we're so sorry because, for us, we also, we've had issues here in the United States. And it seems like in Bob and Mick, you guys can chime in too. One of the Olympic swimmers actually had been abused, and she is the legal person that really has been standing behind the model of safe sport, which is, endorsed by the USOC. And it seems like that they now are requiring more things for more people more often, because it used to be every 2 years you had to take safe sport. Now you must take it every year. And it's required in order to get certified, no matter what level that you're at, that it's with USA Volleyball. And we have really 3 major other organizations. We've got AAU and JVA, and then you've got AVCA. And it becomes a collective support system, because it seems like social media has aspirated everybody to be able to put anything at any time. And it's been very, very difficult. And Mick, you may talk just briefly about too, and Bob, because you guys were at the collegiate level most recently.
Well, I think the United States all across the country has concern about these same issues. It's not just Japan, and that doesn't mean that we should accept them. We should fight very hard to allow students to have fun playing their sports and to be able to choose what sports they want to play. And as you go higher in trying to be successful, that's a lot of times where you get a lot of the abuse, because pressure makes people change their attitudes and sometimes the way they teach and the way they coach. So we all just have to be mindful of that when we're working with young athletes, and treat them the way we'd want to treat our sons or daughters, and the way we would like to have people treat us. So I think that's a good point that you've made, and we certainly support you in this endeavor, and we will continue to pass the word.
And Bob, since you're in the men's volleyball?
Yeah, I think it's less prevalent in the men's volleyball than in women's volleyball. But I think, Ruth, you kind of hit the nail on the head with, the educational programs that are out there now, making everyone more aware of this situation and how to deal with things properly. And just the whole process of education is what makes it much easier for everybody to know how they are supposed to act in certain situations.
Excellent. Okay, so we're now out of time. These guys always, when I say we're out of time, Kanae and Yasuko, most important thing is we did a final video that will be a salute and a special shout out to Tokyo for hosting the games. Sayonara.
ありがとうございました。
Okay. What about that interview?
Well, I'd like to hear what Brian has to say about it because I know he has some opinions and he kept quiet most of the time. So, Brian, what do you think?
Not being part of the record. I actually thought I was better in this show than in any show I've been on all year.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a pretty
I
good
agree.
evaluation.
I agree with that.
No, it's sensationally, I think it was sensationally organized by you, Ruth, and the questions by all three of you were great. And she's got a wealth of knowledge and information. And I was shocked how straightforward she was in her answers. I was really kind of surprised. And the last thing that was said was very important. And she asked for help. And I thought that was good. I think that, like Mick and Bob and Ruth, you said that the similarities of abuse between all places in the world is there. There are some differences, I think, in certain countries. The way she said, and I've watched it firsthand, is the training, the militaristic training of young girls in volleyball is a little different than in this country, and too accepted. And our problems tend to be more extreme visually, but watching their practices or the way they're treated from the first day, in my mind, is abusive. And we can help by, I would love to be able to go to Japan and do some practices with master coaches and sit there and have the coaches, Japanese coaches, observe how we make adjustments and how we interact with kids. So that's all I was going to say.
Excellent.
I thought it was also really interesting, some of the points that she had made about the reaction of the people in Japan and how that's going to affect their political situation moving forward, and the effect that economically it's going to have on Japan. And she alluded to how it's been a negative and positive for other countries over other Olympiads. I think that's sometimes not realized by most people.
Well, in 1984, in Los Angeles Games is the only game since then that's made money. All the rest have lost money. So it's a burden on these countries. And the last part about that we learned was the International Olympic Committee is the only one that can decide whether it's called off. Japan cannot call off the games because they made an agreement with the committee. So the only one that can call off the games is the committee. Japan didn't want it, but the committee said, you're going to do it. Isn't that interesting, that kind of power? Huh?
Yeah, the takeaway I got on this was very interesting. I pointed out that in Australia, hosting the games, you thought it would be a big positive for volleyball. And in effect, it was a negative because the Australians were not able to put out a good product in either the men's or the women's competition indoor. She pointed out the same is true in Japan, that in fact, if the Japanese teams do not do well, people will move away from support of that their country seems to follow the areas like their softball team, who won the other day, beating the U.S. team. There's going to be a big rush now for support of the softball team and the softball league, their professional league there in Japan because of that. And when she listed all of the placements of where Japan has been in the previous Olympics, I was shocked that I didn't know that they'd done so well. Actually, I thought they had done pretty decent considering the size of the athletes that are starting to play both men and women's volleyball around the world, and the the dominance of the power of the game, Japan has still been in the hunt in the women's part. And probably that's fueled a bit by their professional league that they have, which helps them restock. But she did say that declining enrollment means that people have to make serious decisions what sports they're going into and what sports they're going to watch and what sports they're going to support. So, you know, baseball and baseball and
Sumo wrestling.
softball have been really important. In wrestling now is a big deal also. So I was hoping that the games would stimulate Japanese to come to the forefront in volleyball, and she kind of indicated that wasn't probably going to happen.
You know, Mick, to support what you said there, is that when Japan was really good in volleyball, the International Volleyball Federation budget was 90% paid for by Japan. So all the money was coming from Japan because they were doing well. So the idea was, I was always hoping they continued to do well because the financial support was there. And we could, and it's gone down since then, and I'm concerned that it will continue to go down. But
they were phenomenal hosts of events also.
Right.
They were really exceptional hosts.
Well, the other thing too, you say that about Japan, they also were very supportive financially for USA Women's all the way through the 1984 Olympics. And they were also supportive of Cuba.
Yep.
So they wanted to maintain Cuba, you know, at that level too. So they were very
If it wasn't for Japan, Cuba would have disappeared sooner.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was great that, you know, she's still actively involved as a sports culture and cultivator and still doing documentaries. And she's been following us for almost 2 months now. So she must have been pretty interested in what we were doing. And it was great to see her really be very open about everything.
Yeah, Ruth, it was amazing that you were able to get her on our show. She's
Well, we got to thank
really
Dr.
special
Oglesby.
person. Well, no, it was wonderful that you got her.
Well, she was extremely direct. I did not expect that. I expected more of a company line, and she was great. She kind of voiced her opinions, and she didn't hold back. And
Well, somehow you guys existed without me, survived.
We had your questions.
That's the answer. Okay.
That's right. No, we had those, and those were good questions. Do we want to talk? We got a couple more minutes before we sign off.
I want to point out what Mick was saying. I mean, I feel bad about where Japanese volleyball might be at this point. I'd like to see them do well. Of course, I much rather see the U.S. teams do well because I think that really does make a difference. I think the reason we have seen such a boom in volleyball in this country is because the teams have been more and more successful, you know, since 1984 on, and they've always been in the hunt, and anything can happen. And I think we're there again this year. I just hope it ends up so that we can continue to see our teams competing, which just gets more and more people excited and interested in volleyball.
We certainly could medal in all 4 events, and we could end up with maybe 3 gold in those events. We'll see.
You know, she did point out a research study, though, that it was a little bit difficult to understand. I believe what she said, though, is there's no proof that success stimulates increased activity in the sport.
Right. When you host.
Yeah, I heard that too. I just disagree with that. I think it really does make a difference. And the U.S. is an indication of that.
That's our next wrestling match. U.S. versus Japan. Bob versus our guest.
Yeah, in sumo wrestling, then we
That's
better.
right.
Yeah, Bob better start eating a little bit more.
Ruth just wants to see me in one of those little get-ups. That's all it is.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now that'll be an interesting one. All right. Are we ready to close out? Or you have any last comments?
I'm sure John has some things he wants to talk to us about.
All right, John. Well, no,
Well,
he's not on yet. You're already
Hey,
jumping.
I could throw random stuff in here.
That's right.
I
All
mean-
right, so let's go real quickly. For those coaches that are interested in our consulting services, please go directly to our website, volleyballmastercoaches.com, and click on the contact form and look forward to customizing an in-person or virtual clinic for you. You missed one of our shows or our remix flashbacks, jump over to Instagram and click on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. A special shout out to our partners, SNA Sports and Baden Sports, and thanks to our content providers, NFHS, JVA, Coaches Insider, and ABCA. Now, let's jump real quick to our Buzz and Buzz Reaction digital partner, Dr. John Foreman, who will update us on his most recent book coming up, not his podcast, but his book.
Well, all right, I'm revisiting volleyball coaching wizards from the female perspective, because we've got 6 interviews that we've done so far that we're going to be packaging together. You probably know some of the names. You might not know some of the other names, which is kind of the point of the whole thing. So I'm hoping to get at least the electronic version of that out by the time I start preseason in roughly 3 weeks, because after that, who knows what's going to happen. The print version probably take a little bit longer just because of processing time, but I'm looking forward to getting that into people's hands.
Okay, now we have a special shout out to 82 coaches and leaders in our sport for being guests on our show over the past 62 weeks. Be sure to tell your friends about our weekly news show. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next week on The Buzz.